Just shout! Just shout! I like it.
That's right, folks. Slavery in America still exists today in 2020. And what do? We sit back and allow it. To fully understand the systemic racism in our prison systems and how slavery is still existing today, we need to start with the history of slavery in America. So let me go ahead and give you a brief history. Now, I will be leaving some things out. This will just be a quick rundown of some of the major points of how slavery began and still exists today in America. Spanish and Portuguese settlers bring slaves from Africa to the Americas. Santo Domingo, now capital of the Dominican Republic, was the New World's first international slave port. Well, ain't that just special? These rich white assholes since 1501 have been going to Africa and stealing human beings, stacking them like cordwood, where they piss and shit all over each other while they make the Grand Atlantic trip. Holy shit. And the awful truth is, it was a bunch of rich white dudes like this jackass who stole a bunch of land from the indigenous people of America, and they needed free labor. Why not get free people? Why not just get cheap labor like slaves? Assholes. This practice of buying and selling slaves in the United States of America, or the Americas, have been going on for 400 years. This is absurd. You know, white guy shows up, picks out a couple human beings to bring home to work his fields and be his little bitches. Not right. And they would work fields. They would have to breed. And the children would have to work fields. And these conditions went on all the way until 1865. December 18th, 1865. Slavery abolished. U.S. Constitution, Amendment 13, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or only places subject to their jurisdiction. The key word is here, except as a punishment for crime. They still want their slaves, damn you. After the ratification of the 13th Amendment, this was America's first boom in the prison system, most of them black. Basically what they did was they replaced slave with the word criminal. Those pieces of shit. Then in 1915, this happened. The Birth of a Nation. This is by far the most racist movie that was ever made. It literally vilifies black men by using white men in blackface. Holy shit. I don't think we should be afraid of black men. We should be afraid of white men in blackface. They seem to want to rape women. But that's what this movie did. It made black people look inferior and appear to be like the giant master criminals and rapists that we all came to know. This is America. Holy shit. Not only did this movie demonize black people, it also made the KKK look like they were the superheroes we all needed to come and get rid of this scourge of the African American. This movie is literally the biggest piece of shit racist movie ever made in America's cinema. And the KKK can kiss my ass. White America was just enthralled with this new cinematic creation by one of the most racist people ever to walk the earth. However, our great president at the time, Woodrow Wilson, had multiple private screenings because he thought the movie was so fucking awesome. Racist presidents are our history. This movie should have been a social outcry. Instead, lynchings of black Americans went steadily upwards because of the rise of the KKK. And this is apparent in the 1920s. The KKK went from literally no members to 500,000 members in just a few years. And it was apparent that it was a democratic problem. As you can see, there was lots of Nazis at the 1924 Democratic Convention. Plus, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, We had the Jim Crow laws, you know, the ones that segregated blacks from whites, from even using the same toilet. You know, I'm pretty sure our shit all smells the same. But this abuse went on for years, and this is where our cops today literally learned how to be abusive towards the African American community. And it went on like this all the way through now. This still goes on today. These ass whippings are still happening by the police. Oh my God, why can't we change? Because there was television and video cameras at this time, we were able to see the beginnings. We were able to see the police brutality that went on in these communities live from our own home. This is the first awakening for some white Americans. However, it was just a small handful. Civil rights leaders have tragically been killed over the years.
Around 6 p.m. on April 4th, King was shot dead on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel where he was staying. Memphis Night editor Doug Stone filed this urgent after confirmation from the police. Nobel laureate Martin Luther King Jr., father of nonviolence in the American Civil Rights Movement, was killed by an assassin's bullet Thursday night. King, 39, was hit in the neck by a bullet as he stood on the balcony of a hotel here. He died less than an hour later in St. Joseph Hospital.
On December 4th, 1969, Chicago police raided Fred Hampton's apartment, shot and killed him in his bed. He was just 21 years old. Black Panther leader Mark Clark was also killed in the raid. While authorities claimed the Panthers had opened fire on the police who were there to serve a search warrant for weapons, evidence later emerged that told a very different story. That the FBI, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and the Chicago police conspired to assassinate Fred Hampton.
Many civil rights activists were killed during this time period in American history. Nixon's war on drugs was racist as shit.
Public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
Here's Nixon's chief advisor on the agenda of the war on drugs.
1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
Dickhead. But Reagan was much worse. He literally destroyed a whole generation of African Americans with his war on drugs.
Those of you engaged in law enforcement have struggled long and hard in what must often have seemed like a losing war against the menace of crime.
Remember, crime and criminal equals slave and slavery.
As you know, one of the most critical duties that we faced upon taking office was controlling the influx of illegal drugs into this country.
My name's Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking. What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America. The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud.
So explain the whole Iran-Contra thing and what your role in it and what Blandon's role was in it.
Well, my role was that Blandon would bring me drugs to sell to raise money for the Contras. The Contras was backed by the CIA. which was Ronald Reagan and George Bush's pet peeve, George Bush Sr.'s pet peeve.
But then they were also selling drugs, well, they were allowing drugs to pass through into America and using that money and putting it to the Contras as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. If it wasn't bad enough for the Reagan administration to pump drugs into black communities, the national media was using propaganda to vilify African Americans.
Super predators. A super predator is a young juvenile criminal who is so impulsive, so remorseless, that he can kill, rape, maim without giving it a second thought.
The prediction was terrifying, and lawmakers cracked down on juvenile offenders.
This country went into a moral panic over super predators.
But there was one problem.
The calculations were wrong. They made it up.
So who the fuck made it up?
Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy.
I'm not a super predator, Hillary Clinton. Okay, fine, we'll talk about it.
Clinton's crime bill just increased mass incarceration and actually made the police force even more violent and brutal that we're dealing with today.
The other big piece of legislation on Capitol Hill tonight is the crime bill.
Violent crime and the fear it provokes are crippling our society. The crime bill before Congress gives you a chance to do something about it. A chance to be tough and smart.
Besides Bill Clinton, who else said, I want to help write this piece of shit bill so I can incarcerate more African Americans for slave labor?
The most significant federal effort to deal with violent crime in America that has ever been undertaken.
If you remember, criminal equals slave, crime equals slavery. Remember that? This crime bill is a direct result of massive amounts of prisons being built and the incarceration of millions of Americans. At the end of this mass military buildup of police and prisons, over 2.3 million Americans would be incarcerated.
You stood up and used that tough on crime, phony rhetoric. That bill was a huge mistake.
There's no question that crime bill contributed to America's mass incarceration problem.
1994 crime bill, we had a gigantic epidemic in America of violence, particularly in African American communities.
The United States has less than 5% of the world's population and nearly 1/4 of its prisoners. That is more than 2.3 million people incarcerated in the United States. Who the fuck is Alec? And what do they have to do with the slavery problem in America today?
We can't show you what's behind this closed door. A place where legislators and corporate lobbyists have an equal vote. A place they don't want you to see.
You need to be credentialed at registration.
We are credentialed. We are Georgia. We're Georgia Media. Are there legislators in there? Are there legislators in there? We are Georgia credentialed media.
Here? Please step over here.
What? There's Georgia legislators here. Are laws being made in there?
This isn't the state capitol. It's a resort hotel in Savannah where lawmakers are wined and dined as members of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC.
What is ALEC?
It's really a corporate bill mill. I mean, they're cranking out legislation, putting it in the hands of legislators who go back and file it.
Georgia Senator Nan Orrick would know. She was once an ALEC member.
What happens in these back rooms?
And there are votes taken that have the corporate folks at the same table voting with the legislators on what bills to pick. And that at its core just screams out inappropriate.
You're telling me that in these rooms, a corporation has an equal vote with a legislator on a piece of legislation?
They absolutely vote, and the truth be told, they write the bills.
ALEC bills come complete with blanks where legislators need only fill in their state name.
Here we're credentialed to observe legislators here in Georgia wherever they meet to discuss laws. He's calling for backup.
ALEC staffers had 4 off-duty sheriff's deputies standing by while we talked with the group's director of communications.
Can we do an interview with you?
Actually, no.
Why not?
If you'd please turn the camera off.
No, we can't turn the camera off. That's one thing we don't do.
Okay, well then I'd like to have you escorted out of the building, please.
Okay, I'm a guest of this hotel. I'm actually staying here at this hotel.
You are staying at this.
Yes. So here's the question is, if Georgia legislators are meeting here, we're credentialed right here to see Georgia legislators making laws. Are they discussing things that could become law here?
Georgia legislators are here participating in discussions where they're learning from legislators from others.
So why can't the people who elected them see the process?
This is a private meeting.
A private meeting paid for by whom?
By our members and donors.
Our lobbyists, correct?
No.
Are you here for this conference too? Are you really?
We met 2 lobbyists and a state representative from New England in the hotel bar the night before and recorded our conversation.
You have to pay your own way?
Well, on a trip like this, that's where you would come in, man. On a trip like this, I'm the state chair of Alabama.
Yeah.
And I look for financial supporters,
right?
Lobbyists, the like. So, to send us like a couple $1,000 every so often, that gives me money to help those folks with. Now, on the other hand,
and we pay more to be here, so it helps support them.
And you do.
I see. So the lobbyist fees to come to the event actually help subsidize the legislator coming here.
Our lobbyists, correct? No. They're not lobbyists? The ones that we recorded in the bar last night aren't lobbyists who are here members?
He signals to the sheriff's deputies.
All right, I'm a guest of the hotel,
not
sir?
for long. Not for long.
I'm here, but paying guest of this hotel, sir.
We'll take care of that.
Escort you up to your room and get your things.
Did we violate some law or something? I mean, are we violating a law here?
Don't say no.
Don't say nothing.
See, Alec is corrupting the cops and the government. Yeah. These assholes also sponsor a company called the Corrections Corporation of America, who rebranded recently as Core Civic. This asshole company is a for-profit corrections facility that are used all across our country and federal and state prisons for free labor and to get rich off of all the prisoners that they house. How fucking super awesome. This is just a short list of companies that use prison labor. I mean slave labor. What the fuck? My personal observation with this guy in charge, we're in for a hell of a much worse time.
These are animals.
Look at my African American over here. I'm asking for the vote of every single African American citizen in this country. What do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? No, I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person that I can tell you.
Some of the president's most vicious verbal attacks have been directed at black female journalists.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying
I don't know why you'd
that
say
the
that. It's such a racist question. You just have to sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I didn't call you.
Do you want him to rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions. The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing.